I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA president barged into my home at 3:17 a.m., insisting I hand over my retired canine dogs. Her excuse, she said, neighborhood had a problem with the dog breeds and labeled them dangerous. Funny thing is, the only thing truly in danger that night was her face, if she ever touched them. Let me start from the beginning. The first sound wasn't thelic. It was the silence. It's a kind of deep pre-dawn quiet, where the house itself seems to be holding its breath. I was a cop for 20 years, a canine handler for 15 of them. You don't lose. Thigh instinct for when the silence is wrong. My eyes snapped open in the dark, and my hand was already moving, reaching forth comforting solid weight of the mag light on my nightstand. Beside me, my wife Lisa stirred, a soft murmur in her sleep. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe it was a dream. The lingering ghost of 1,000 nighttime call-outs. Then I felt it. A low rumble that vibrated up through the floorboards. It wasn't thunder. It was coming from downstairs, from the throats of my partners. Titan and Nina littermate, German shepherds with sable coats and titanium nerves. They weren't barking. Not yet. It was a controlled, menacing growl. The sound of two highly trained German shepherds alerting their handler that a threat was present and actively being assessed. Another cop might have reached for Agon. I reached for my jeans. My dogs were my weapon system, my early warning, and my family, a solid 100 pounds of loyal, intelligent muscle, a piece. I swung my legs out of bed, the floorboards cold under my feet. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed a blood-red 3:17 a.m. Marcus. Lisa's voice was thick with sleep, but threaded with the familiar worry of a cop's wife. What is it? Stay here? I whispered, my voice calm, practiced. Locked the door behind me. There was a faint click as she did, and I moved out. Into the hallway, my bare feet silent on the runner. The dog's growling grew louder as I descended the stairs, a perfectly synchronized stereo of disapproval. They were positioned excellently as I'd trained them, side by side at the bottom of the stairs, a living, breathing wall between the front door and their family. That's when I heard the second sound, a metallic scrape, a jiggle. Someone was at our front door, in our quiet, ridiculously named little paradise of Maple Shadow Estates. Crime was supposed to be limited to teenagers toilet papering oak trees and disputes over lawn gnome placement. This was different. This was deliberate. I crouched at the turn in the staircase, peering through the balusters. The dogs glanced up, theirs swiveling. A flicker of their tails acknowledged my position. They were waiting for my command. I set the mag light on the banister. Steel backup wasn't needed yet. The scraping at the lock continued, clumsy and impatient. Whoever it was, they weren't a professional burglar. A pro would be quieter, faster. This was arrogant, entitled. Then came the unmistakable, sickening snap of cheap metal breaking off inside the lock mechanism. A beat, orchestrated silence from the other side of the door was followed by a sharp, percussive bang. Not a gunshot, a kick. The door shuddered in its frame. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a robbery. This was a home invasion. Quiet. I commanded the dogs in a low, firm tone. Their growls ceased instantly, but their bodies remained coiled. Every muscle tensed. Another kick, harder this time in the wood around. The deadbolt splintered. The door flew open, slamming against the interior wall. And there, silhouetted against the dawn gloom, stood the architect of our suburban nightmare. Karen Davies, all 5'3" of her, clad in a pastel pink tracksuit, her face a mask of pinched furry. Her long brown hair whipped over one shoulder. She held a tactical-style flashlight in one hand, its beam cutting through the darkness and landing squarely on Titan and Nina. She didn't even seem to notice me on the stairs. Her focus was entirely on the dogs. There they are, she hissed, her voice dripping with a venom that could curdle milk. Shadow Guard, move in. Secure the assets. Ah! Two burly figures in dark uniforms and ski masks pushed past her, armed with catchpoles and heavy-duty nets. My mind struggled to process the sheer audacity. The president of our homeowners association was breaking down my door in the middle of the night with 2 hired goons. Karen, what in God's name do you think you're doing? I said, my voice dangerously level as I stepped into the light at the bottom of the stairs. She flinched, genuinely surprised to see me. It was a flicker of vulnerability that she quickly papered over with a sneer. Marcus Hale, Shasade, as if reading from a clipboard. You are in violation of Maple Shadow Estates Covenant 14B, amended by emergency board vote as of midnight tonight. All combat breeds, including German Shepherds, are hereby banned from the community. She took a step forward, a piece of paper. Waving in her hand, these animals are to be surrendered immediately for relocation. Refusal to comply will result in, well, it's a LIN, the notice. The two goons took a hesitant step toward the dogs. Titan and Nina didn't move, but the air around them felt like it was crackling with electricity. They were looking at me, waiting for the word that would turn them from disciplined guardians into a blur of teeth and fury. My mind was racing. This was insane. It was illegal, but it was happening. You are not taking my dogs, I said, planting my feet. I was unarmed, barefoot, and outnumbered. But these were my partners, my family. Oh, I think I am, she replied, a smug little smile playing on her lips. This is for the community's safety, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop me. She nodded to her men. One of them lunged forward with the catch pole, aiming for Titan's neck. He had no idea the mistake he was about to make. And I knew in that split second that our quiet treatment was officially over. This was no longer just about regulations. This was a declaration of war. And Corin Davies had just fired the first unforgivable shot. To understand how we got to a 3 a.m. home invasion led by a woman in a pink tracksuit, you have to understand Karen Davies. And to understand Karen, you have to understand Maple Shadow Estates. My wife Lisa and I found the place about a year after I put in my papers. 20 years chasing bad guys with a dog as my partner leaves a mark on you. Not the bad kind, mostly. But you're tired. Tired of the noise, the anger, the constant hum of the city. You start craving quiet. Maple Shadow Wasket personified. It was a postcard of suburbia. It's all manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, and a serene-looking lake that was probably only 6 inches deep. It was perfect. It was the kind of place where the biggest drama was supposed to be Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning petunias. We bought a modest rank-style house at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a big fenced-in yard for Titan and Nina to patrol. For the first 6 months, it was everything we'd hoped for. Peace. And at the center of that peace, holding it all together with a smile and a plate of foam-made brownies, was Karen Davies. When we first moved in, she was the one-woman welcoming committee. She brought us a welcome basket filled with local jams and a laminated list of community rules. She seemed wonderful, energetic, organized, and genuinely invested in making the neighborhood a great place to live. Everyone loved her. She organized the 4th of July barbecue, the Halloween parade for the kids, the Christmas-like competition. She knew everyone's name. Everyone's kids' names, everyone's dogs' names. Joasi undisputed, unanimously elected. Queen of Maple Shadow. Looking back, the signs were there, but they were subtle. It started with small changes to the HOA covenants. For uniformity, she'd say with a cheerful wave, mailboxes had to be a specific shade of forest green. Holiday decorations couldn't go up before December 1st. Lawns had to be mowed on a specific schedule. Small things, annoying but not tyrannical, each. Rule was passed with a smile at a sparsely attended meeting where she provided coffee and donuts. No one wanted to argue with the nice lady who worked so hard, so we all just went along with it. Her power grew quietly, methodically. She formed committees for everything. The Architectural Review Committee, the Landscape Committee, the Community Watch Committee, and appointed herself the head of each one. She was judge, jury, and executioner on the matter of fence heights and trash can placement. The fines started small. $25 for leaving your recycling bin out too long? $54 unapproved driveway sealant. People grumbled, but they paid. It was easier. Then fighting her, she had an answer for everything. A clause for every complaint. A sweet but firm tone that made you feel like you were the unreasonable one. She was a master manipulator disguised as a den mother. My own first run-in was minor. I was restaining our deck. Project Lisa and I were excited about. 2 days in, Anitis appeared on our door. The color I'd chosen, a pleasant cedar tone, was not on the pre-approved list. The fee was $100. I went to talk to her, expecting a reasonable conversation. Instead, I got a condescending lecture on preserving the aesthetic integrity of the community. She spoke to me like I was a toddler who had colored on the walls. I saw a flicker of something cold in her eyes that day, a hardness that didn't match the perky smile. I paid the fine and repainted the deck in HOA, approved beige. Lisa and I laughed it off, calling her the beige dictator. Boutique left a sour taste in my mouth. Then the rules started getting personal. The Henderson family was told their son's basketball hoop was a neighborhood eyesore and had to be removed. The Millers, who had a small memorial garden for their daughter, were cited for having non-compliant lawn ornaments. With every challenge, Karen became more entrenched, more authoritarian. She had a small group of loyalists on the boardwalk, rubber-stamped her every decree, the Community Watch, which she ran became her personal spy network, reporting every minor infraction. The atmosphere in our little paradise began to change. Neighbors started eyeing each other with suspicion. The friendly waves across the lawn became less frequent. The peace we'd moved here for was eroding, replaced by a low-grade anxiety. No one wanted to be Karen's next target. We all just kept our heads down, hoping the storm would pass. But I had a vulnerability that the others didn't, 2 of them. Titan and Nina, they were my constant companions, the living, breathing reminders of a career I loved. They were impeccably trained, gentle with kids, adored by most of the neighbors who weren't in Karen's inner circle. But they were also large, powerful-looking animals. In the eyes of someone looking for a weapon, they weareth perfect target. I should have seen it coming. The week before the break-in, she'd started a whisper campaign. "Did you see the size of those dogs?" I heard one of them snapped at the mailman. A lies, but fear is a powerful tool. She was laying the groundwork, manufacturing a threat that only she could solve. She was turning my partners, my family intimatesters, in the minds of our neighbors. The emergency vote to ban combat breeds was the culmination of her campaign. It was held via email with no discussion and passed in the dead of night. It was a tactical strike designed to be executed before we could react. The break-in wasn't just about enforcing a rule. It was a power play, a public demonstration of her absolute authority. She had pushed, and now she had kicked in my door, believing she was untouchable. She believed we were just another family who would roll over incompetently. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know what my dogs were capable of, and she had no idea how far I would go to protect my own. She thought this was the end of the argument. It was only the beginning of the fight. The Momentgoon lunged with the catch-pole. My training slammed into the driver's seat. There was no time for shock or anger. There was only action and reaction. "Titan, watch," I barked. It wasn't an attack command. It was a command to engage, to control, to use his training not to maim, but to neutralize. Titan moved like a blur of black and tan. He didn't go for the man's arm or leg. He went for the pole. With a powerful leap, he clamped his jaws around the aluminum shaft. The man, who probably outweighed Titan by 100 pounds, was jerked forward, his momentum completely arrested. The pole bent under the pressure of Titan's bite, making a sound like a giant soda can being crushed. The goon stared wide-eyed at the dog holding his weapon in a vice grip. He was frozen, a perfect illustration of a man who had brought a knife to a gunfight and just realized it. While all eyes were on Titan, I moved. I took the stairs in 2 bounds, landing on the foyer tile. I didn't go for the first guy. He was neutralized. He went for the second one, the one with the net. He was just starting to bring it up. His attention split between me and the standoff with Titan. I closed the distance in a heartbeat. I didn't throw a punch. I used an open palm strike to the side of his head, right over the ear. It's a move designed to disorient, not injure. His eyes rolled back and he staggered sideways, the heavy net slumping to the floor. "Nah," My beautiful, intelligent Nina had been waiting patiently. "Nah, door," I said, pointing. She shot past. Me, not towards the intruders, but to the still-open front door. She planted herself in the doorway, a silent, unmoving sentinel. No one else was coming in, and no one was leaving until I said so. What all happened in less than 5 seconds. HOA Shadow Guard operatives were neutralized. And Karen Davies was standing in my foyer, her jaw hanging open. The smug confidence had evaporated, replaced by a look of sputtering disbelief. She looked from her useless goons to my perfectly controlled dogs, and then to me. "This is so," she shrieked, finding her voice. "I'm calling the police. You and your vicious beasts have assaulted my security team." "Go ahead, Karen," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I picked up me phone from the small table by the door. "In fact, I'll do it for you. I'd love to explain to the officers why you and your masked employees kicked in my door at 3 o'clock in the morning. Breaking and entering is still a felony, right? I'd also love to show them this," I added, nudging the bent catch pole with my foot and the broken lock on my front door. Her face went pale. The legal implications of her actions were phenylidoning on her. Her whole strategy was built on intimidation and the assumption of compliance. She never planned for resistance, let alone competent, effective resistance. "This is an official HOA action," she stammered, trying to regain her footing. "It's all perfectly legal. You received the notice." "What I received," I said, taking a step toward her, "was a threat, and what you've done is commit a crime. Now you have 2 choices. You and your friends can leave my property immediately, or you can stay and explain it all to the police. Your call." She glared at me, her mind racing. Her plan was in tatters. She gestured wildly at her dazed employees. "Get up, get out," she snarled at them. The one I'd hit was still shaking the cobwebs out of his head. The other one couldn't seem to let go of his crushed pole, as if he couldn't believe it had happened. They stumbled out the door with Karen close behind. Before she left, she turned back, her eyes filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. "This isn't over, Hale Shespat. I'll have those dogs put down. I'll ruin you. I'll own you." Then she was gone, leaving my splintered doorframe and the wreckage of her failed raid behind her. I took a deep, steadying breath, the adrenaline beginning to recede. Lisa was already halfway down the stairs. "Marcus, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're fine, honey," I said, going to her. "Everyone's fine?" I called the dogs. Titan, Nina, release, heel. Titan immediately let go of the mangled pole, and both dogs came to my side, sitting perfectly, looking up at him for their next instruction. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around them, burying my face in their fur. They were more than partners. They were family, and someone had just threatened to kill them. The immediate threat was gone, but Corinne's parting words echoed in the air. "I'll ruin you." This wasn't a simple dispute with a power-tripping HOA president anymore. This was a vendetta. The next morning, taped to our brand-new, temporarily repaired door was the first official salvo. A fine for $250 for harboring a prohibited animal. And underneath in small print, this fine will be assessed daily until the violation is rectified. Attached to it was a grainy, edited video clip binge-mailed to the entire neighborhood. It showed a German Shepherd, which looked vaguely like Titan, snapping and lunging at a fence. It was a complete fabrication, but to the untrained eye, it was terrifying. The war had begun, and Karen was already deploying her propaganda. I needed help. I needed someone who knew how to fight a different kind of war. I picked up my phone and called my old Marine buddy, Dylan Vega. "Dylan," I said, "I've got a situation. How are your drone skills these days?" Dylan Vega arrived 2 hours later in a beat-up pickup truck that looked like it had survived a war zone, which it probably had. He stepped out wearing cargo shorts, a faded Metallica shirt, and a grin that could charm a snake. Dylan and I served together in a special operations unit before I ever thought about joining the police force. He was the guy who could make a long-range communication antenna out of a Pringles can and some copper wire. After the Marines, he got into private security, specializing in technical surveillance and countermeasures. In other words, He was a world-class geek with a clearance. Morning, Marcus Hest, clapping me on the shoulder. Nice digs.
Oh,
A little beige for my taste. Gah. He surveyed the splintered doorframe. And I'm guessing HOA president. Isn't a fan of constructive dialogue? Let him inside where? Lisa had a pot of coffee brewing that was strong enough to dissolve steel for coffee. I laid out the whole sordid tale from the creeping regulations to the 3 a.m. door-kicking party. I showed him Theffin notice and the fake video Karen was circulating. Dylan watched the video on my laptop, his cheerful Deminor finishing, replaced by a cold, analytical focus. He replayed the 10-second clip over and over. Garbage, he muttered. Look at the pixelation around the dog's muzzle when it lunges. In the background, it's looped. See that bird flying by? Flies by again at the 7-second mark. This is an amateur, cute and paste job. A good one, but still amateur. He leaned back, taking a sip of coffee. So this Karen lady, she's the neighborhood. Queen Bee runs everything, and now she's declared a holy war on you and your dogs. That about sums it up, I said. She threatened to have them put down. Dylan's eyes hardened. Okay. No, we don't let that happen. His brain was already working, gears turning. This isn't just a power trip, Marcus. Middle of the night raid with hired muscle, fabricating evidence. This is high-risk behavior. There's some things going on here. Normal HOA tyrants send nasty letters. They don't go full-on tactical. He started pacing the kitchen, his energy filling the room. We need intel. We need leverage. We need to turn this woman's world inside out before she can do any more damage. That's when Lisa, who had been listening in quietly, spoke up. There's something you should know. The Miller family, the ones with the memorial garden, Karen put a lien on their house over it. They're retired on a fixed income. They're terrified they're going to lose their home. This was a new level of cruel. This wasn't just about power. It was about predatory behavior. Okay, Dylan said, stopping his pacing. Phase 1, Fortress Hale. We need to make this house impenetrable and turn it into an evidence-gathering machine. I'm talking cameras, not your little doorbell cam. High-race night vision motion-activated cameras covering every inch of your property line. We'll web this yard in an infrared tripwire. A squirrel farts on your lawn. I'll have a 4K video fit with thermal imaging. He was already sketching on a napkin. We live stream it to a secure cloud server. Anything she or her goons try, we document it in undeniable court-admissible quality. Phase 2, WAS reconnaissance. Dylan's specialty. I need to know everything about Karen Davies, he said. Everything, her finances, her connections, her business dealings, the Shadow Guard solutions she mentioned. I'm going to find out what it is. He also suggested we talk to other neighbors quietly. This woman has been terrorizing people. He said there are other victims. They might be scared to talk, but they're potential allies. That evening, Lisa and I took a walk. We didn't talk to anyone directly yet, but we observed. We saw the fear. We saw Mr. Miller frantically measuring the height of his hedges. We saw the Hendersons staking down their son's basketball hoop in silence. The entire neighborhood felt like it was being held hostage. The tension was thick, suffocating. Brought a new notice, a new fine tape to our door. $250 for the dogs. $54 unauthorized repairs to the doorframe. $104 intimidating behavior by a pet, citing another fake report. It was a war of attrition. She was trying to bleed us dry financially and emotionally. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid us. Others gave us small sympathetic nods when they thought no one was looking. We were becoming Paris in our own community. One afternoon, I was in the backyard with Titan and Nina. They were just lounging in Thiessen, being dogs. I saw one of Karen's loyalists, a woman named Janice, peering through the slats in her fence, her phone up like she was filming us. Stared right back at her until she scurried away. The paranoia was setting in. We felt like we were under siege. Night. Dylan's first shipment of gear arrived. Boxes and boxes of it. As we started unpacking DVRs, cables, and high-tech cameras, I found a half-eaten dog biscuit near our back fence. It looked innocent enough, but my gut screamed at me. I sold it in a plastic bag. I didn't need a lab test to know it was poisoned. Karen wasn't just trying to find us and Tez a mission anymore. She was actively trying to kill my dogs. The line had been crossed. This was no longer just about defense. Now it was about taking the fight to her. I looked at Dylan, who was configuring a camera that could probably read a license plate from space. "Find her weakness, Dylan," I said, my voice grim. "Find it, and we're going to exploit it." For 2 weeks, we were locked in a cold war. Dylan transformed our quiet suburban home into a surveillance fortress. Tiny, almost invisible cameras now watched every approach. Motion sensors were buried along the fence line, synced to a silent alarm on Dylan's and my phones. Dylan himself was a whirlwind of focused energy, fueled by Lisa's coffee and a righteous fury that matched my own. He practically moved into our spare bedroom, which he quickly converted into a command center filled with monitors, laptops, and a spaghetti-like tangle of wires that he called organized chaos. During the day, it was a ghost, digging into the digital life of Karen Davies and her mysterious company, Shadow Guard Solutions. At night, he was our sentinel, monitoring the live feeds, often staying up until dawn, watching for any sign of trouble. He'd text me at 3 a.m. with updates like, "Subject Janice is deploying lawn sprinklers at an unapproved hour. The rebellion begins." His humor was a pressure valve, the mounting tension. Meanwhile, Lisa and I focused on the ground game. We started talking to our neighbors, but cautiously. We didn't lead with Karen's midnight raid. We started by asking about their own HOA issues. It was like opening a floodgate. I met Sam Coe, a quiet certified public accountant who lived 2 streets over. He told us how Karen had fined him thousands over the color of his window shutters, which had been the same color for 10 years before it came to power. He tried to fight it, asking to see the HOA's financial records, as was his right. Karen had stonewalled him, drowning him in procedural nonsense until he gave up. "She runs the books like her own private slush fund," Sam said, his voice tight with anger. "But the bylaws she wrote make it almost impossible to get a proper audit without a majority vote. And she controls the board." I saw theft fire in his eyes. I said, "What if we could get you those records?" A slow smile spread across his face. "If you can get me the data, I can follow the money." We had a new ally. The real break came late one night. I was in the command center with Dylan. He was staring gently at one of his monitors, a string of code scrolling rapidly down the screen. "I'm in," he whispered, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. He had managed to bypass the flimsy security on the HOA's server. It was amateur R protected by a password that was literally Maple Shadow 1. "She's arrogant," Dylan muttered. "She never thought anyone would have the skills or the nerve to look." He downloaded everything. Years of financial statements, meeting minutes, internal emails. He sent the entire data dump to Sam Coe, who replied with a simple text a minute later. "Let the games begin." But Dylan wasn't done. He was digging into Shadow Guard Solutions. Publicly. It was a registered LLC with a P.O. box address. It offered executive protection and asset relocation services. It all sounded very corporate and bland, but there was almost no public footprint, no advertising, no real client list. It was a ghost. "Front companies are designed to be boring," Dylan explained, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "You follow? The registration, the tax ID numbers, the digital breadcrumbs." He worked 4 hours, diving deeper and deeper into the internet's dark corners. I watched, fascinated, as he peeled back layers of digital camouflage. Finally, he stopped. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the screen, not with triumph, but with a look of stunned confusion. "Marcus, you need to see this," he said, his voice quiet. I leaned over his shoulder. On the screen was a record from a federal penitentiary's inmate fund. It showed a series of regular deposits into the commissary account of a prisoner named Anthony DeMarco. The deposits were coming from a bank account linked to the Shadow Guard Solutions LLC. My blood ran cold. I knew that name. Anthony Mad Dog DeMarco, vicious high-level arms trafficker I had personally investigated and helped put away more than a decade ago. It was one of the most dangerous cases of my career. DeMarco was smart, ruthless, and had a network that spanned 3 continents. My canine partner at the time, a magnificent shepherd named Rex. Waste one who found the hidden cache of weapons that sealed the case against him. DeMarco had looked at me in the courtroom after the verdict was read, his eyes filled with a chilling, bottomless hatred, and mouthed 2 words, "I'll remember." I had dismissed it as the empty threat of a caged animal. I had been wrong.
"Villain!"
I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, pull up everything you can find on Anthony DeMarco." Dylan's fingers were a blur. A few clicks later, a new file appeared on screen. It was a public record search. There, listed as DeMarco's next of kin, his only living relative, was his sister, a woman who had legally changed her surname a year after her brother's incarceration. Her new name was Davies. Her first name was Karen. Everything snapped into focus with the force of a physical blow. The move to Maple Shadow, the charming takeover of the HOA. The obsession with rules and control, the targeted harassment, the escalation, the combat breed ban. It was never about lawn gnome aesthetics or the color of my deck. It was never about building a perfect community. It was about revenge. She had spent years building this elaborate trap, this suburban kingdom where she was the law. All for the sole purpose of getting to me, of isolating me, and destroying the things I loved, just as she felt I had destroyed her brother. This wasn't an HOA dispute. This was a vendetta. We were standing right in the kill zone. Air in the room went from tense to ice cold. Lisa, who had come in with a fresh pot of coffee, saw the look on my face and set the pot down without a word. I explained who Anthony DeMarco was, told her about the case, the threats, the pure venom in the man's eyes. I told her how my old partner, Rex, had been the hero of that case. The connection was undeniable and terrifying. "So, this entire thing," Lisa said, sinking into a chair, her face pale. "The HOA, the fines, living here. It was all a lie, a setup." "A years-long operation," Dylan confirmed, his voice grim. "She picked this neighborhood, took control of it, and turned it into her own private hunting ground. She's been waiting for you, Marcus." For the first time since this started, a wave of profound weariness washed over me. I had reto escaped this world, the world of vendettas, of predators, of looking over your shoulder. I had come here for peace, and instead I had walked my family directly into the crosshairs of a meticulously planned revenge plot. We were no longer just fighting an out-of-control HOA president. We were fighting the sister of a hardened criminal mastermind, a woman who clearly shared her brother's capacity for ruthlessness and long-term planning. My first instinct was pure white-hot anger. Cold, dreadful understanding washed over me. Kennel, the shipment of dogs we were watching right now, that was just business as usual. The real operation, the one that mattered to her, was happening tomorrow. This whole thing was a distraction. While we were focused on her criminal enterprise, she was moving in for the kill. Her revenge wasn't just about stealing my dogs. It was about destroying them and using the law itself as her weapon. Calling the cops right now would stop this shipment. Yes, but it would also show our hand. Karen would be arrested, but she'd lawyer up post-bail. And by the time we untangled everything, the kill order, which was already signed and in the system, would have carried out. She had outmaneuvered us. She had created a checkmate situation where any move we made would result in us losing our family. I looked at the live feed of her on my tablet, calmly overseeing her criminal operation. And then, at the euthanasia order on my phone, the choice was suddenly horrifically clear. We couldn't just expose her business. Had to expose her heart, her motive, her pure evil, all at once, and in a way that would leave her with no escape. The legal route was now a trap. We had to create our own. "Don't call the police," I said into the comms, my voice tight. Dylan pulled the drone back. "Clean up. Get out of there. Mira, you too. Go home. Erase everything." We saw nothing tonight. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" Dylan's voice was a mix of confusion and protest. "We have a her. It's over." "No, it's not," I replied, my mind racing. A new, desperate plan beginning to form. It's not over. She's one step ahead of us. She just put a kill order on Titan and Nina for tomorrow morning. I forwarded him the image of the euthanasia order. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with a shared understanding of how close we had just come to a catastrophic failure. Karen hadn't just built a better mousetrap, she'd minded the cheese. Her business was a separate entity from her revenge. We had focused in the business while she had been aiming for our hearts the entire time. She was willing to sacrifice her interior operation to get caught red-handed with a van full of stolen dogs, as long as that kill order was executed. Back at the house, the atmosphere in our command center was grim. The elation of our discovery was gone, replaced by the cold reality of the ticking clock. We had less than 12 hours. How did she get a judge to sign this? Lisa asked, her voice trembling with rage as she stared at the kill order on the monitor. A falsified vet report, Dylan said, pointing to a name on the form. Dr. Ellis Dester Finch. I'll bet you $1,000 he's on her payroll. And the animal control officer assigned to execute the order, Markham. He's got a history of closing evidence in animal cruelty cases. She didn't just find a loophole, she bought a whole team. It was a chilling LeBrint move. By using official channels, she had insulated herself. If we resisted the animal control officer, we would be the ones obstructing justice. We'd be arrested, and the dogs would be seized and killed anyway. Jihad turned the law into an inescapable weapon aimed directly at us. We were backed into a corner, and that's when this gone twist happened, the one that gave us a fighting chance. Another message came through on the burner phone from's, same anonymous number. It just said, Markham's partner is a rookie, named Stevens. He's a good kid, hates bullies. He doesn't know the report is fake. Buth thinks the rush order is suspicious. He's the one taking the lead tomorrow. Markham will just be his backup. A new piece was on the board, an unknown variable. Our anonymous source wasn't just giving us a heads up. They were giving us an opening. I realized who it had to be. There was only one person with access to this information in Arieson to be disgusted by it. The honest partner of the corrupt animal control officer she'd bought. Someone on thine side saw the rot and decided to act. A new plan began to form in my mind, bolder and far more dangerous than anything we had considered before. We couldn't stop the system she had set in motion, so we had to let it play out. But on our stage, under our lights, "She thinks she's coming for our dogs tomorrow morning," I said, the pieces falling into place. She'd probably be parked down the street watching it all go down. It's the culmination of her revenge. She's not going to miss it. Dylan nodded, catching on. So we give her a show. We give the whole neighborhood a show, I corrected. We are going to fake a trip. We'll pack the car tonight, make a big show of it. We'll tell the neighbors we're going to Miss Sisters for the weekend to let things cool down. Lisa caught my eye, a flicker of understanding in her gaze, and of the cameras running. Every single one, I confirmed. Dylan, I need every camera we have, plus the micro drone focused on this house. I want a live feed that we can broadcast, not just tow a secure server. I want to be able to push it to every phone in this neighborhood with the press of a button. Dylan's grim expression broke into a slow, predatory smile. Community would dread asked of a live home invasion. I can do that. I can hijack the emergency alert system she set up for the HOA. The irony was delicious. We would use her own tool of control to orchestrate her downfall. The plan was simple, audacious, and had 1,000 ways it could go wrong. We would let her team walk into our trap. When Markham and the rookie Evans arrived to execute thecal order, they would find an empty house. Karen, watching from afar, would assume we had run. She would see Hera penning, her chance to not only have the dogs killed, but to also burglarize our home, plant evidence, or worse. She would send in her shadow guard goons to break in and grab the dogs themselves. Before animal control could officially clear the house, and that's when we would spring the trap. We wouldn't be gone. It would be hidden in common waiting. We would light them up, not just with cameras, but with high-intensity floodlights, Dylan Hadrig. We would document their every criminal act. And the climax wouldn't be violent confrontation. It would be something better. It would be my dogs, Titan and Nina, doing what they were trained to do best: control a situation without violence. We weren't just going to prove our innocence. We were going to prove in front of the entire world who the real monsters were. Spent the next few hours in a fever of preparation, turning our home into a stage for the final act. The stakes were no longer just about justice. They were about survival, and tomorrow morning the curtain would rise. The hours before dawn were the longest of my life. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was the coiled silence of a trap waiting to be sprung. By 4:00 a.m., everything was in place. Lisa was safely at Mira's house, watching. A duplicate live feed. Her role to be our outside line to the police one, the time was right. Dylan was set up in his truck 2 blocks away, acting as our digital puppet master, ready to posh the broadcast live, and I was hidden in the small reinforced crawl space under the back porch, a place I had discovered during our initial home inspection. It was cramped, damp, and smelled of earth, but it offered a perfect concealed view of the entire backyard, and the back of the house through a cleverly hidden vent. With me lying perfectly still and silent were Titan and Nina. They knew. They could feel the tension, the electric hum of anticipation. But they were professionals. They lay with their heads in, their paws, their ears twitching at every distant sound, waiting for my command. We had made a show of leaving night before. I loaded suitcases into our car, gave a sad wave to one of Karen's known spies watering her lawn, and drove off. I circled the block and parked several streets away, sneaking back to the house under the cover of darkness. As far as Karen knew, the house was empty, our dogs abandoned, our spirit broken. At 8:05 a.m., exactly as our source predicted, the white animal control van pulled up. I watched on my tablet the feed from one of Dylan's streetlight cameras crystal clear. Tharuki Evans got out. He was young, looked nervous, but determined. His partner Markham, the corrupt one, stayed in the truck, looking bored. Evans walked up to the front door, euthanasia order in his hand. He knocked. He waited. He knocked again, louder this time. He peered through the windows. He walked around the side of the house. From my hiding spot, I could see him trying the back gate. It was locked. He made a call on his radio, then walked back to the van, shrugged at his partner, and they drove away. The first part of the bait was taken. Any official observer. They had made their attempt and found the residents gone. The real show was about to begin. Less than 10 minutes later, a black windowless van, different from the Onette, the kennel, but just as menacing, rolled slowly down the cul-de-sac and parked directly across the street. I zoomed in on the driver. It was Karen Davies. Her face was a mask of triumphant glee. She thought she had won. She thought we had fled in fear, leaving our dogs to be hunted down. She picked up a radio, spoke into it, and then her van pulled away, parking just around the corner. Out of direct sight, but close enough for her to watch her plan unfold. A moment later, 2 men in dark work clothes got out of Anather's car. It was the same 2 goons from her first raid. They weren't wearing masks this time. Arrogance. They scanned the quiet street, then made a beeline for my backyard. I held my breath. Their fence, I whispered into my throat mic. Phase 2 is a go. Copy that. Dylan's voice came back in my earpiece, standing by to make them famous. One of the men pulled out a pair of bolt cutters and with 2 quick snaps cut through the chain-link fence, creating an opening. They slipped through, moving quickly and quietly, toward the back door of my house. This was the moment of truth, the crime in progress, the home invasion. They reached the back door. One of them produced a pry bar. With a sickening crunch of wood, the door jamb splintered, and the door swung inward. They were inside my house. "Now, Dylan," I commanded. "Light them up." "Showtime," he replied. Instantly, the entire backyard was bathed in the blinding glare of industrial-grade floodlights that Dylan had mounted in the trees. The 2 goons, caught in the sudden harsh light, froze like rats eyeing a laboratory experiment. They spun around, disoriented, shielding their eyes. At the exact same moment, every phone in Maple Shadow Estates buzzed with an emergency alert. But instead of a weather warning, It was a link to a live video feed titled Live Home Invasion at the Hale residence. "Tighten, Nina," I said, my voice low and calm. "Halt." The two dogs shot out of the crawl space like K9 missiles, but they weren't attacking. They were herding. This was a custom command we had practiced 1,000 times. A modified version of a police crowd control technique. They separated. Nah going left, Titan going right, circling the two stunned intruders. They didn't bark. They didn't growl. Used their presence, their speed, and their intelligence to force the two men back away from the house into the center of the yard. Every time one of the men tried to make a break for the fence, on-off the dogs would cut him off with a lightning-fast feint, appearing in his path like a shadow. They were credentialing the situation perfectly without laying a tooth on them. It was a masterclass in canine discipline. From my tablet, I could see the neighborhood coming alive. Lights were flicking on in houses. People were coming out onto their porches, their faces illuminated by the glow of their phones, all watching the live drama unfold in my backyard. They were seeing the truth with their own eyes. They saw the cut fence. They saw the broken door. They saw two intruders being held at bay. Not by vicious monsters, but by two brilliantly controlled animals. And then, final act, Lisa had made the call the second the break-in happened. The distant wail of sirens grew closer, converging on our quiet cul-de-sac. Two police cars screeched. To a halt in front of the house, officers poured out, weapons drawn, taking in the bizarre scene. The floodlit yard, the two cornered intruders, the two calm dogs holding them there, and the entire neighborhood watching from their lawns. Just then, Karen Davies' van came peeling around the corner. She had obviously heard the sirens, but she slammed it on. The brakes her face a horrified canvas of disbelief. As she saw her entire, meticulously crafted plan lie in smoking ruins, broadcast live for the entire world to see. An officer walked calmly over to her van and motioned for her to get out. The trap had snapped shut. The aftermath was swift and decisive, with dozens of neighbors as witnesses and a high-defin, multi-angled stream of the entire crime. Karen's case was open and shut. Her two goons folded, like cheap lawn chairs, giving full confessions and implicating her as the mastermind before their handcuffs were even double-locked. The police, armed with our intel about the kennel, raided the pampered pooch that same afternoon. They found 43 stolen dogs, including Kilo, the state police Millenio, and several other decorated canines. The discovery turned our local HOA drama into a major federal case. Karen DeMarco Davies, the woman who ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist and a condescending smile, was charged with everything from breaking and tearing and conspiracy to interstate transport of stolen property and racketeering. Her real name and her connection to her infamous brother made national news. The beige dictator of Maple Shadow was revealed to be a cold, calculating felon driven by a decade-old vendetta. The legal system, which she had so expertly twisted to her own ends, came down on her with its full, unyielding weight. A judge, citing her flight risk and the sheer audacity of her crimes, denied her bail. Her assets, including the money she had systematically siphoned from the HOA, were frozen. Sam Coe, our CPA hero, worked directly with the prosecutors, handing them a perfectly organized file that detailed every cent she had stolen. He became a local legend. A thick-white accountant who brought down a queen pin, the corrupt animal control, Officer Markham, and the veterinarian Dr. Finch were also arrested, their careers ending in disgrace. The rookie Evans became the star witness in their internal affairs investigation and a randomest source. We never found out for sure who it was, but a week later, a gift basket with two of the biggest chew toys I have ever seen appeared on our doorstep with a simple, unsigned card that read, "Thank you." The change in Maple Shadow Estates was immediate and profound. The cloud of fear that had hung over us for so long evaporated ever. The HOA board members who had been Karen's loyal sycophants all rest signed in shame. An emergency town hall was called, and for the first time, it was packed not with spies, but with empowered homeowners. Sam Coe was unanimously elected as the new board president, with Meera Patel as his vice president. Their first act was to systematically review and repeal every petty vindictive rule Karen had put in place. The basketball hoops went back up. Memorial gardens were restored color, it seemed, was allowed back into our lives. We became unlikely celebrities. Neighbors we had never spoken to stop by to thank us, to apologize for not speaking up sooner, and most of all, to pet the two. Heroes off story. Titan and Nina, who took all the attention in stride, soaking up the ear scratches and praise with dignified grace. A few weeks later, all the stolen dogs had been returned to their rightful, tearfully grateful owners. The state police sent me a personal letter of commendation. Ann Kilo's handler brought him by to personally thank Hiscanine rescuers. The two powerful dogs sniffed each other, wagged their tails, and seemed to come to a mutual professional understanding. The story, for the most part, was over. Justice had been served, not because the system worked on its own, but because a few people who were pushed too far decided to push back. We didn't just fight for ourselves. We fought for our whole community. Tonight, I'm sitting on my newly restained deck, a rich, deep, and beautifully non-compliant cedar color. Lisa is beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. At our feet, Titan and Ninar, snoozing, their bodies twitching in dreams of chasing squirrels, not criminals. The air is filled with the sound of kids playing down the street and the distant happy bark of a neighbor's dog. It's quiet, the kind off-right, peaceful quiet we came here for. I learned that a man will go as far as it takes to defend his own, but the real victory isn't about how well you fight. It's about what you build in the aftermath. We didn't just expose a criminal, helped our neighbors find their voices again. We didn't just save our dogs, we helped restore a community. And as I watch the sun set over the lake, I know with absolute certainty that we are finally home. And this time of peace is